And we say good evening too. We are live here at Meadowview Conference Resort and Convention Center in Kingsport. This is the VNH Wealth Strategies March Madness Party. Mr. Bingham is out here, Matt, doing a little, obviously singing. We're going to capture some of his music. We're going to get rolling here in just a few minutes. Talking basketball. Hearing from some folks from CSNBC's in town to talk about a little bit about our economy, which I think is very cool. And we're just going to enjoy it. We're going to talk a little hoops. I'm glad you're not riding the rails with me on my picks. My brackets are already shot. I picked Clemson, they're gone. I picked Louisville, they're gone. So it's not good already for me. But that's okay. That's why you play the game, as they say. So anyway, let's enjoy his music. We'll come right back here in a second, and we'll get this thing cranked up. We're with you for a couple of hours, live at Meadowview Conference Resort and Convention Center here for the B&H Wealth Strategies March Madness 2025 Customer Appreciation Night. Here's some more from Matt Bingham. You're listening to Matt Bingham, doing some music, obviously, long Black Veil, old Johnny Cash song. We're here at Meadowview Resort Conference and Convention Center in Kingsport. Let's say Meadowview. You know where it's at if you're around here. Oh, this is a good one. I'll fly away. Here we go. Let's get you up to speed what's going on in college basketball, the March Madness. Again, we'll get back to Matt in just a second here. Wisconsin out of the East Regional defeats Montana 85-66. Houston rolls over Southern Illinois out of Edwardsville 78-70, beat 78-40 rather, beat them by 38. Auburn, top seeded out of the South, rolls over Alabama State by 20, 83-63. Clemson upset McNeese State with Will Wade leaving to go to North Carolina State when his season's over. It lives for another day. McNeese State defeats Clemson 69-67 in an upset. Number 12 beat number 5, and there it is. That's usually where it happens. And so those are the finals we have so far. The other ball games today. You have finals. Purdue rolls over High Point by 12. Not really rolls, but beat them by 12. 75-63 to Midwest. I would consider this an upset. I took Louisville to win it, and Creighton beats them by 14 out of the South, 89-75, the final there. So that's what's going on. Partial scores right now as we take a look around March Madness in the East Regional. BYU leads by 12 over VCU in the alphabet game with about a minute and a half to play in the ball game, so you got to call BYU on that one. The 6th seed beating the 11th seed. Gonzaga over Georgia with 11 minutes to play, 11:42 to be exact. Gonzaga leading Georgia in the Midwest, 66-48. That's what's going on with those two. Later on, of course, you've got Tennessee and Wofford coming up at 6:50, which is not that far away. In about, 45 minutes or so, the Volunteers at 27-7, taking on Wofford at 19-15. Arkansas and Kansas in the West, Yale and Texas A&M tonight in the South, Drake and Missouri in the West, Utah State and UCLA in the Midwest, Omaha and St. John's, one of the teams I've got pegged, 30-4 in the West, coming up. Later on this evening, University of California at San Diego against Michigan, and UNC Wilmington, the Seahawks take on the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. All that straight ahead. Lady Vols play tomorrow night. Tennessee will play at Ohio State tomorrow night in Columbus, on the Ohio State campus, rather, to take on the South Florida Lady Bulls. So that's what they've got going on tomorrow night. And let's jump in here real quick before we go and go back to more Matt's music. Let's see how Greenville did in the state boys basketball tournament. And let's see, Greenville, how did they fare? Let's see here. I'm trying to scroll down and get it for you before we go back to this music. They won it. Greenville beats Munford 63-46. They'll play Upperman tomorrow in the semifinals of the 3A boys basketball tournament. So go Greenville. That's in our neck of the woods. So Greenville wins today. Only Northeast Tennessee team still going. Greenville beats Munford 63-46. The Green Devils now 25-9. They'll play in the semis tomorrow against Upperman. Upperman beat Hume Fogg 54-40. Upperman at 29-3 in Greenville tomorrow at 25-9 in the semifinals of 3A boys state basketball tournament. So there you go. Hey, we're at Meadowview. We're going to be hearing from some speakers coming up here. We're hearing Matt Bingham in the background. We're about to go back and catch his music. It is the customer appreciation event for B&H Wealth Strategies based in Kingsport. We're here broadcasting live. I'm glad to be here, enjoying ourselves. And we got speakers coming up. We got folks who will come talk to us. And so let's go back, catch more. You see him on the screen, Matt Bingham, on the B&H Wealth Strategies March Madness Customer Appreciation Event here at Meadowview in Kingsport. Here's more of Matt Bingham.
Yeah. How are you?
Oh, good.
Yep. Is this on? Good evening, everybody. Who's hungry? I promised to feed you all, so I guess I ought to go ahead and get that done here. I think we got enough of the bill paid that'll serve you now. Let's give a big hand though for Matt Bingham, my nephew, singer-songwriter. So I want to get you all started through the line, but first I want to quickly introduce, and I'll do a better job of this introduction later, but this is my pastor, my teacher, a man that deserves to be called rabbi, but mostly he is my friend. This is Dr. Tony Crisp, and he's going to give the blessing. You'll see him later on in the presentation tonight, but let's bow our heads and pray and let Tony kick this evening off.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's pray together. Father, we're so grateful to you that we live in this nation where we can gather together like this without fear of someone coming in and taking us away. Lord, we're grateful that we live in a land of plenty, but we know that there's people all around us that desperately need help. Lord, thank you for the blessing of knowing each other, for friendships. Thank you for a company like the one that God has given to Jeff, and thank you for those who work with him day by day and help him. And Lord, today, as we mingle around with each other and sit at the tables together and have developed friendships, we pray that the fellowship would be sweet. Thank you for the food. Thank you for providing for us. In the name of Jesus our Lord, amen.
Amen. Who leads the way? Don't everybody go at one time. Let somebody go.
So there you go. It's a good way to get us started. So we're here live again at Meadowview in Kingsport, the B&H Wealth Strategies March Madness Customer Appreciation Event. We thank you for being with us wherever you may be. As the late Rush Limbaugh would say, across the fruited plain, we'll be talking some basketball. Tennessee takes on the Wofford Terriers out of the Southern Conference coming up in about, starts at 6:50 in theory. And so that's what's coming up. We're going to recap for you what's happening. We're going to be talking to some folks around here about what's going on and basketball-wise. So in the South region, Auburn is going to play Creighton Red, the Blue Jays. Auburn beat Alabama State 83-63. Creighton, the Blue Jays, in an upset, 9 beats 8, eliminates the Louisville Cardinals. Very surprised at that. I thought Louisville was going to make a pretty deep run. That's what I thought. That's what you get for trying to guess. But it is March Madness, so it's Auburn and Creighton's already been set for Saturday. Also, over in the East, Wisconsin defeats Montana as expected. The 3 seed beat the 14 seed, 85-66. Badgers will play on to, it looks to be BYU, the Cougars, up big over VCU late in the ball game. So it'll be a 3 versus a 6 in the East coming up on Saturday. Houston, no problem with SIUE, Southern Illinois University out of Edwardsville, beat them 70-48. Gonzaga apparently is going to be their opponent as they've got the Georgia Bulldogs on the ropes rather. So that would be would appear to be Saturday's matchup there. Houston will take on Gonzaga. McNeese State in an upset, 12 got 5 on this one. McNeese State defeating Clemson 69-67. I had the Tigers going deep. So there's 2 5s getting beat by 12s already. So McNeese State, with Will Wade, who's already announced he will move on to be the head coach at North Carolina State when their season's over. And it won't be, they'll play for another day on Saturday. They eliminate Clemson, the 5th seed. And number 4, Purdue had no problem with High Point, a 12-point victory by the 4-seeded Boilermakers. They'll play McNeese State on Saturday. Houston will get on Gonzaga. And so beginning to take shape here little by little. On this opening day of March Madness, we're here live at Meadowview in Kingsport. Thank you for being with us wherever you may be. And we're going to go back and capture, see if I can get Mr. Bingham over here, get him started, get him talking. You know you're in a good place, and the man singing Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. We're joined by Jeff Bingham from Bingham and Hensley, B&H Wealth Strategies. So, what you doing? You want to hold it? Let's let you hold it. Holding it. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
I'm going to hit this right here, and now talk to me. I think you're going to be good.
Tom Taylor. The boys are back.
The boys are back. It's good.
Boys are back.
So, things are good. So tell us, we're out here tonight by invite. We appreciate that. I got folks down in Florida watching. We appreciate that bunches. So we are here. We get to what are we going to do tonight?
Well, the point of this is really just to give thanks back to all my clients and tell them how, almost 60 years ago now, but my dad and Norman Hensley, and it's really about the clients. We're just kind of stewards of this business, and we just want to say thanks. And we've got some good information. We just want to have some good communion and camaraderie, and just tell our clients how much, and maybe have a little spirituality wound into that as well tonight.
He's got a story. We're going to let him talk about that coming up here in a few minutes. But you asked me that. Louisville got beat. So it's like, do you follow Tom Taylor to Vegas and gamble and bet? And he said, how's your bracket doing? I said, thanks, buddy. But he didn't know, but no. And that's why they call it March Madness, because you just don't know, right?
March Madness, brother. March Madness.
You got it. You just don't know.
Absolutely. Thursdays, Fridays, two best days in the sport, for sure.
Absolutely. And it's proven again, national championship, let's don't see it. Florida exposed them last Sunday in the SEC championship. We don't have a big guy in the middle. And unfortunately, we've got one. He's just not. Florida's got some bigs. Everybody's got some big. A lot of teams got some bigs. So, am I right? Tennessee just doesn't have the horses this year.
You and I talked a little bit about this off air recently, and when I say this, it's almost funny when I say this. I don't watch a lot of basketball anymore. I'll allude to that maybe later in my talk, but just due to my eyesight situation, but I did watch the Tennessee-Florida game, and I do know a little bit about basketball. I've been pretty close to the game and played a little overtime. So, and what I saw from Florida is that their guard play is outstanding. They're strong inside and they're deep. Other than that, they're not very good. And then for those that I've talked to that do still, but I do think the Vols are good, and they play so hard for Rick Barnes. Depth's a problem, and because they play such hard defense, if the games are called, closely, and they got in bad foul trouble against Florida, made a good run to cut it to 5 with about 6 to go, but attrition takes over. The energy it takes to get there, and plus having 2 kids with 4 and a handful with 3, and then they start fouling out. It's just hard to. It's hard to beat a team like Florida when you're like that,
Absolutely.
But any team gets a hot hand. One thing that saw that in the games that they against both Auburn and Florida at times, it just is like watching, as my dad would say, it's like watching paint dry.
Yep. You got it.
So, but yeah, and honestly, I don't know a lot about the other teams. I understand that Duke is good, and they've got a stud kid, that's there.
Flag.
They've kind of gotten their swag back, I guess. Mm-hmm. Houston, I suppose, is the number 1 seed. I know nothing about them.
They won today 70-48, so they run them all. They got them pretty good. Of course, it was Southern Illinois from Edwardsville, so you expect that. But, yes, you're right. Houston's got some horses.
And, and I understand St. John's is good again, and that's got to be good for the game because, back when I was really into basketball, the Big East and St. John's, Georgetown, Seton Hall, all those teams in the Big East, it was a heck of a conference. When Louis Carnesecca was at St. John's, they were a lot of fun to watch. So I think that's neat to see teams like that kind of make a resurgence. I think it's good for the game.
I think you're right.
I think there's a lot of things that aren't good for the game, but I will not go there tonight. But
no.
This is fun. The idea of having a March Madness party for us is, I'd say that. I don't know what percentage of my audience, my client base here is really, that into basketball, but they're into having. I guess they're into having me feed them.
Yeah.
and
you are.
And I'm glad to do that. But no, they're here to have a good time and just share with each other, and that's people together and have a party.
Absolutely. And we're doing just that here at Meadowview. You're watching the B&H Wealth Strategies March Madness Customer Appreciation Event. This is not the first one. It's the first one we've been to for a while, but I know COVID got us for a while, but this would be number what? How many times have we done this now?
Somebody asked me that today, and I can't articulate, but pretty much from about 2000 on, we did them, let's say every other year. We were kind of on the even years, at that point in time. So I would say we've done somewhere 7 to 9 probably, and 2018 was the last one that we did, and I'm going to talk about the significance of 2018, and we can say COVID is what got us and kind of put us out of our rhythm, but there was a lot more than COVID.
Yep, there was. So great story. One of the several shows back, as only your dad could say, he said, "My God, have you not eaten today, son?" He said, "You're cleaning us out, them little wieners."
Well,
I said, "What do I do? What do I do?" He said, "Keep eating them." I said, "Okay."
Yeah, coming from my dad, that's rich. Because as my dad used to say to those that would care to listen, is he got hungry between bites.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
he could put away the child.
He was, and he wasn't an overly large man. I mean, he was a big man, but so he wasn't. When I say that, I say that with all the affection that I can possibly have. My dad was one of the finest men. Not only was an unbelievably talented financial planner, he was just truly a good human being.
Yes, he was. Had many interviews with him back in the day on the radio. We did Good Morning Kingsport. We're here at Meadowview again talking to his son, who does a pretty good job too. Now, we're going to talk more later on about this, but for folks out there going to Elizabeth game or Milton game, it's B&H Wealth Strategies. What's it all about? What is B&H Wealth Strategy? Give us that in a nutshell, would you please? I know you're going to talk more about it later, but
yeah. What I would say that B&H Wealth Strategies is about sitting down with people. I mean, we're a financial planning firm, okay? You want to put action-based business. So when I sit down with somebody or anybody that's been in that office, part of our family, we want to know part of our family. We want to know them as intimately as they will allow us to know them. And when we can sit down with them, and that first it really is.
Yeah. Been at from Mr. Wagner and Mr. William Ford. Amen. I know my was in the hospital. When he called me up to do this show, he said, "You realize that let's save it here for you in a few minutes." But he said, "That's your tease. Come back here in a few minutes. Let him tell you the story. You going to tell it up the podium? Is that what you're going to tell it?"
Yep. I'm going to do it.
We got the podium up there. We got the mic up there. I want you to stick around and hear. So, you want to hear Jeff Bingham's story? Because he said, well, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, what I would say, thank you, Tom, for those very, very kind words. Everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story.
And what makes my story unique is that it's mine. In a C game, and people are going to be throwing oranges at me.
Get going.
So thank you, and I'll be back.
Yeah, you're like Arnold. I'll be back. Good job. Appreciate it about what's going on with the bracketing. But I want you to be right here with us to hear his story, because it's, when he told me, I can tell you this, it's the best thing. I said, okay. Then once I heard what he's going to do, I said, absolutely. Let's go to the podium. Here he comes right now.
Am I on? Okay. While everybody's finishing up and getting in line of my story, that the Tennessee game is going to be on, and I'm afraid people will start throwing oranges at me, and I can't see well enough to duck. So you all very much, first of all, for coming out. I really do appreciate it. Give yourselves a hand, please. Didn't find anybody. This is quite interesting. I hadn't done this in a while. Those of you all that have been around this firm, a lot of circumstances that'll be talked about later, not the retirement. We have not done one of these since 2018, which was that she put together. I'm telling you what she was doing when she worked for us, and she just is. She's just one of the best humans that you will ever meet. I mean, and she put this party together. I've challenged her on this mission, and she not only met what my expectations were, she far exceeded them. So please, everybody, give her a hand. Also, some other people that I need to thank, that you saw me over there, sitting over there, and many of you all already know Tom Taylor. Tom and I go way back back when we used to have to go to radio stations, go in, be there, be present to do a radio show. And my dad and I used to drive out to Gray and sit down with Tom and do whatever it was we did. We would just talk about all things finance and basketball and just life in general. And my dad and Tom were very good friends. And I miss my dad. I'll talk a little bit about him. Sorry, that kind of gets me. But we've been doing this, gosh, I don't know, Tom, probably 30 years ago, probably since the mid-1990s when we started. And for lots of reasons, I guess we broke up for a little while, not with anything that went on, but with COVID and everything that happened. And because I was doing a show with Tom, we used to do them in our office, once a month. We'd come in there and do them. It was a lot of fun, a lot of good information. And the last one that we did here in 2018, we live streamed that as well. This one is going to be much better. So I'm glad to have Tom Taylor here tonight, back W stands for. Like telephones have busy signals, and the WWW is the World Wide Web. Inside joke. But, and again, bigger and better than ever. Tom was gracious enough when I called him to say yes. And just thanks to Tom Taylor and his efforts here, man. By the way, Tom Taylor sports radio show last year in 2024 did what? Crossed 1 million views. That is one hell of an accomplishment right there. Put this together when you see this video production that hopefully I won't mess it up, and the program that you're looking at, and Kathy had a lot to do with that, but a friend of mine again that moved to Reno, Nevada, but stayed involved with us for a number of years. John Honeycutt is his name. John said yes, but he bought into everything that I was talking about. And I think when you see some of the work that he's done in this video presentation that's getting ready to come up when I begin to talk, I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, I can't, again, I have some eyesight problems, 2,000 or 2,500 miles away, and he got it. And because he is, as I am, and he designed a website. Okay. So, we'll just go on. So, all right, so he gets their brackets filled out, and if you have it, and make sure you put your name on it, if you want to win. And then we've got some fabulous prizes. In a while either, I mean, come on. A bottle of Silver Oak, if you a bit about in a moment as well. And my good buddy Brian Edwards is in here. Brian, a bit about in a moment as well. And my good buddy Brian Edwards is in here. Brian, where are you? So Brian Edwards and Kim Bishop, who is a trainer there. We need to be conscious of that. We need to get our bikes. And if you need help, you can get an e-bike. Brian is get an e-bike. Brian is a good friend. I've known him, I guess, probably since 2018 is probably when we met. As I'll talk about some things in 2018. But I'm the worst one in this room of the group of cyclists that are here. Not because I don't ride much anymore in many, many ways. But Brian, not because I don't ride much anymore in many, many ways. But Brian bought in 2021, which I'll talk a little bit more about, acquired the bike shop from Larry, bought Larry's Cycle Shop, which is an institution in Kingsport, because Larry was ready to retire. Is Larry here? Okay, I thought Larry might make it, but for whatever reason wasn't able to make it tonight. But anyway, Larry to buy that bike shop, and so in a pretty crazy year in 2021 as well, I helped put him and Larry together and some other folks, and Brian's just doing a heck of a job down there. And if you haven't been in that shop and you want to get fit, and just be bad memory, but Juniper's in Johnson City, a new restaurant over there, and it is supposed to be fabulous. So fill out those brackets, and you get the choices. Did we fill in? Did we do that? Don't pick losers and get yourself out of the bracket. You pick the games that have already gone on, and you pick the loser. That's on you. So anyway.
I would say those words at the beginning meant a lot now, since it said 2024.
It's looping. All right. So another thing, a couple of things, initiatives that we've got going on. Handle it for me. Do it. Help me out. Okay. So a couple of things that we got going on now that I want to make some announcements on. This is the Four Seasons podcast right here. So, and I'll talk more about Four Seasons as we go through. And, and I was talking to Tom about it a moment ago before I came up here. And Four Seasons is something that really started probably 2016. In 2018, as the world became a little derailed for me, we didn't push it as far as we should have, but we brought it back up. It's always been part of us. And what is Four Seasons? B&H Wealth Strategies is a financial planning firm. It does the black and white. It is a transactional business by nature, what we do, right? We buy and sell securities. We buy investments. We make sure we have the tax and stuff. It's very black and white. What is Four Seasons? That is the way you make an experience come to color. But Tom and I were talking about a moment ago, the nuts and bolts have to be taken care of, and we, in my opinion, are as good as anybody out there, maybe better. I learned from the very best in this business from my dad. I've been doing this for over 35 years. I've figured it out somewhat, and so I know how to do that. But what more than anything else, what we want to have is a transformational relationship. That's why everybody is in this room tonight. We want to have a transformational relationship with our clients. We want it to be as intimate as it can possibly come in, let you paint a picture of where you are, where you want to go, and how you want to get there. The expression that is on the board in my office or in the conference room, in the Robert L. Bingham conference room, is Dare to Dream. And we want you to dream and tell us what your dreams are. And if you do that and we listen appropriately, we can get you as close to that as we possibly can and maybe exceed that. Give us your bucket list. What do you want to do? What's your legacy? Bring it to color. It is the salt. It is the flavor. It is the light of our business, and that is what Four Seasons is. So hopefully you're experiencing that. You're like, I wish we'd get that. So, man, this room, are we chewing? I mean, is there like nothing? I got no feedback. I can't see anybody, so if little feedback would be appreciated. So, I did pay for this meal. So, sorry. So, yeah, Clemson. I think we had. Yeah, we brought live brackets from the earlier game, so those were already filled in when we handed them out. But thank you. Another part of this may be the thing that I'm most excited about portfolio management, and then James and Dave Wagner will talk a little bit more about this. But as my life has changed, over the last almost 2 years now, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. What you see up here is the Beatitudes portfolio, the Four Seasons Beatitudes. Funny story about Beatitudes is this is biblically responsibly investing, and I have been involved in designing portfolios for the last 35 years, and this is by far the most exciting, meaningful, impactful thing that I've ever done in this business. And biblically responsibly, and your money with your values, this is a way to do that. I was introduced to this in May of last year, and I hang around with people now that I go, but these are the people that I align myself with now, and a couple of them are doing what in the markets, and again, Dave and James can talk more to this. It has been such a narrow band of companies. We talked all that over the last several years. So most of the return has come from just be where you're going to put your money, but and there are others. But again, if you're going to take those kind of companies out, how are you going to make any money if 7 companies have led this thing? The Magnificent Seven have led over the last several years. So I challenged. I talked to James about this and my good to take place, and James and Dave, the folks at Aptus, bought into it. So we've designed this portfolio to do that. And this stocks, right, the equity or the stock market part of your portfolio. We also continue to own the options hedgings that are in there, and there is nobody out there that is doing this. And we also moderate portfolio or greater in a Schwab or an advisory type account. And I can tell you, nobody was doing it then. BlackRock is now copying us. you're supposed to laugh at that as well. BlackRock is now copying us. Larry Fink decided it was a good idea. And they got a little bit more money than we do. But we've been putting 2.5% position in Bitcoin since then. And we've seen the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And I can talk about that, but that's not what I'm here to talk about, how it works in a portfolio. But you have, with the Biblically Responsible, the Beatitudes portfolio, you have the most unique portfolio. It is, I always use this with James. Nobody from Asheville to Nashville has a portfolio like that. And so not only does it have those components to it, but it works beautifully. And I was exposed many, many years ago during the 1990s when when markets were booming. And I followed a guy by the name of Marty Zweig, and some people in this room probably never have heard of Marty Zweig. But Marty Zweig was a guy that was a risk-averse investor, and I've been risk-averse since I met him. I mean, losing money, the math of loss is merciless, right? As explosive a growth time as there was, until it wasn't when we got to the year 2000. And then people loved having Marty Zweig and risk-averse investing in their portfolio. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make money on the upside, but it does mean that you're going to protect it better on the downside. And when you don't lose as much money on the downside, you don't have to come back on the upside. And that's what the options, that's really the relationship and what drew me to Aptus Capital, because there are a lot of people that talk about being risk averse, very few actually perform. Because I've chased it, I've looked for it since Marty's now dead. But anyway, I say all that to say just about these unique portfolios, and I really didn't mean to spend this much time here, but I did, because I hadn't done this in a long time, so I'm having fun, even though you all aren't apparently. I finally came up with the name with this portfolio after painstakingly putting this together, working back and forth with James, and I know Dave and the folks at Aptus were in the background figuring it out. And so they finally said, James, we got it. Here's the comparison to the core portfolio. You know, we think we've matched up performance. Our risk looks the same. We're ready to go with it. So I prayed and I thought about it. What am I going to name this portfolio? And it came to me. I was in the Gospels, and I was listening. I was reading Sermon on the Mount, and I came up with Beatitudes. And so I called. It was a Saturday morning. I'll never forget. It was early on a Saturday morning because Tony, like me, gets up super early. And I called Pastor Tony, and I said, I think I got the name for it. And he goes, what is it? And I said, Beatitudes. He goes, do you know what it means? And trick question. And I said, and that's true, the story is true. And I said, blessings. And he said, that's right. And so that's the name of it. And we are live with those portfolios now. A few people probably in the room already have that. It's something that we're talking about. And for those that are interested, I want to roll that out in full. We've had a few hiccups, not because of the Beatitudes portfolio. You know, Nancy left, and it's been a little hectic at our office trying to get everything kind of worked together. But we're going to roll this out as we move into the second quarter in full. So I guess that's enough about Beatitudes. I said I wasn't going to talk about investing tonight, and there I went. So sorry about that. So now we brought him in on a Zoom meeting. A lot of you all see the name Billy Hopkins. Or not the name Billy Hopkins, but what is that Silver Oak Wine, Silver Oak Securities on your statements. And I've talked a lot more about who Silver Oak is and what they do and what the role that they play. They're a partner of B&H Wealth Strategies. And Billy Hopkins is the president. And Billy is, I met Billy almost 10 years ago now, by chance in a way, just by timing and how God actually works. And this was a long time ago before I would have ever said anything like that. But I had a nationwide wholesaler that I'd never met before in my office, Scott Parsons, was in there, and I'd seen something about Nationwide, and I'd called him in. And I was ready to leave the broker-dealer that I was with. Y'all might remember the NFP days, the dark days at the end with NFP. That's an inside joke with the staff over here. But I was ready to leave and looking for a home. And Scott mentioned Billy Hopkins' name. And I called Billy, and we just were aligned philosophically in every possible way. And from Tennessee football to Metallica, right, to Metallica. So musically, and just he's a partner. He is just a a quality human being, and he's somebody that I am proud to call my friend. And I'll tell a little bit more about Billy later, but I want to bring him up here. But this gentleman has allowed the firm. He gives us the freedom to operate in a world in which we live in heavy compliance and such rules and regulation. And it still exists from where we are, so don't misunderstand that. But he gives his firms, folks like myself, folks like B&H Wealth Strategies, the latitude to work and the freedom to bring services and opportunities and offers to our clients that most broker-dealers out there in the world would never do. The idea of putting Bitcoin in a portfolio in 2021 with a closed-end mutual fund, nobody knows what that means, but Billy does, would have been absurd for anybody else to have asked. And he thought about it and he said, sure. Because we went through the due diligence and the research. We're not putting heavy weightings in it. We're doing it at 2.5%. Nobody would have done that. Putting together and letting us put together biblically responsible investing. That's not done at many broker-dealers. It is an onerous world out there. They just kind of lock you down. Billy gives firms the freedom to be who they are, if that's what he wants to do. So, Billy.
I don't know which of these am I supposed to be in. So I have to admit I'm probably to blame for this little event, because I think I started chirping in his ear about 2 years ago that, hey, didn't I make a video one time for one of those things you did? And why haven't you done that again? So I may be responsible for this. And so, yeah, I did wear my checkered socks while we're going on here. So I don't want to keep you guys from the game because it probably ought to be over here. But thank you, Jeff, for putting this on, and thank you for letting me be here. Special thanks to Josh at Lincoln, Steve and Chad, Jackson National. Thank you guys so much. Y'all are such wonderful supporters, and David and James at Aptus. Over the last 10 years, I have gotten to know Jeff and his team. Spent a little more time over the last couple of years here in Kingsport. Our office is in Jackson, Tennessee, and if you guys know, that's a little stop on the way to Memphis that other part of Tennessee y'all don't want to go down to very much, but we also have an office in Knoxville. So really gotten a chance to work with Jeff and speak with Jeff, and need to talk, and he is a valuable member of our firm as a friend. So I just thank you guys for the opportunity to be here tonight, and just think the world of his team and this firm, and just happy to be here. So look forward to talking with you. Go Vols. So thank y'all. Appreciate it. So yeah, I am going to bring two other members of Jeff's team, James Yehudi and David Wagner. Dave was wearing a Kentucky shirt. I don't know if he's investments is a big part of what we do when we work with customers. So I want to bring them up and let them kind of tell a little bit of the story of how they support Jeff in the way that, and kind of portfolio management, some of the kind of fundamental principles that they have, as well as just let you get some comfort too, and then I'll let him kind of bring up David. So thank you.
So love to come to Tennessee. We actually had a nice time with the family out in the mountains, and Dave out tonight. I actually got to know Jeff and Jake and team about 4 years ago, and it was a unique time to meet somebody, given the surgeries and everything, and collaborating and having more of a team approach to everything he was doing. And one thing that just surprised me through the whole, due diligence process and just getting to know Jeff over the years is that I feel maybe this is not correct, but I just feel like he is the most optimistic and encouraging person I talk to each week, and he's going he is like real thoughtful and just how much I appreciate the relationship with him, and how exciting a program and procedures that we've built out for B&H Wealth. So our firm is nice. Okay, that's great. So it's what we like to claim as and we help support the biggest goal that every client has, just maximizing their compounded annual growth rate. We created a few strategies that we thought were unique. We found that there was just so much support outside of one strategy that advisors needed, and that kind of was the birth of our services business, where we act essentially as a shared CIO to advisors, where we have a team of 13 credentialed portfolio managers who have expertise in all different areas: private investments, derivatives, fixed income, stocks, and can lean on those people for specific projects, for specific decisions, and help research and help the B&H Wealth team make decisions on investments. And that's essentially what we do, and how we work together. Just real briefly, because I know we're trying to get to the fun stuff, watching basketball. Jeff was really thinking forward in how he allocated to crypto, back in, also been very open to ideas of how we can continue to construct portfolios that are not based on, and that's where some of the options-based strategies have come in, and really it's just another way to manage risk and talk specifics on both portfolios, markets, anything that you guys want to. Talk a little bit about markets. Obviously, Arnick is a regular on CNBC, manager's head of equities, and he is indeed a Kentucky grad. So I just want to make sure.
I've been thrown under the bus now 2 times during the start of this, and I can totally understand that being in Tennessee, but I would like to say that Kentucky is 2-0 against Tennessee just this season, and if we meet you again in the Sweet 16, my sayings is, well, maybe I lost the mic. If you resisting change, ultimately pass away. One of the cool of where this market has been heading, portfolios, so much of environment has substantially changed. It's completely different than where it was 10 years ago, and it's definitely going to be completely different 10 years.
I swear I'm smart in some regards, and then there's others, being a Kentucky person, I'm definitely lacking. But I'm only going to take about 7-8 minutes of your time. I do want to talk a little bit about markets, and I think we need to talk quickly on tariffs. I think we'll talk quickly on being in the next few years, or just in the next 12 months. But I would say there's one thing that I'm not going to talk about, and it's going to be politics. Because like the 1999 movie Big Daddy with Adam Sandler, there's a line in there where obviously he's trying to, in this movie, adopt a child, and they're going to court so he can get custody of this kid. And some guy goes, they go together like lamb and tuna fish. And everyone is absolutely confused because they don't go together. But that's much like politics and the market. They go together like lamb and tuna fish. So I will now news over the last probably 2 months. And it's probably going to continue to be in the headlines for the foreseeable future, especially up until April 2nd. But if you take more of a longer-term approach when looking at the market, I can tell you right now that policy and the policymakers making these decisions, they don't drive the market over longer periods of time. I truly believe that this market pullback that we've seen since the February 19th high, the market's pulled back 10.01%, give or take 10%, has really been more off of growth worries. But the intraday volatility, the genesis of that is actually going to be on the tariff side.
But I think I can prove to you guys there are a few different statistics. I wish I had some charts for you to show you that, politics today, today, the macroeconomic environment, meaning the strength of corporate America, the strength of the consumer and its propensity to spend, that's the only game in town. That's the only thing that matters, and not politics. And I think if I were to say one political thing, so I've already broken one rule, is that, we can agree on one thing in politics, that Donald Trump and Barack Obama, they couldn't be more two different people. From a policy standpoint, from a person standpoint, from anything. But if I were to put a chart up here, we can send it out to you guys in our decks. Jeff and we all put together great decks we can send to you. And it shows you the performance under the first 4 years of the Trump administration and the 8 years under the Obama administration. And within the S&P 500, the S&P 500 is basically a benchmark, a mechanism to grade yourself on U.S. domestic stocks, specifically the largest ones out there in the world. And there's different things called sectors underneath the hood of the S&P 500, financial companies, energy companies, utility companies. And if you look at the performance of every 11 sectors underneath the hood of the S&P 500, whether it was under the Obama regime or the Trump regime, the sectors that did the best were identical under Trump 1.0 and Obama. It was information technology, it was communication services, and consumer discretionary stocks. But not only were the best performing sectors under both regimes the same, so were the worst performing sectors under every single regime. That was consumer staples, and that was energy. So if you try to look through the forest through the trees, that over longer periods of time, macroeconomics drives markets. And that's exactly what that statistic shows you there, is that you could have Obama and Trump, two different policymakers, completely different people, and yet returns are almost identical on what worked versus what didn't work. So the learning lesson there is that politics and markets, they go together like lamb and tuna fish. Now, if we go to the second subject here of the market pullback, I'm a firm believer that the market pullback that we've seen is normal and it's healthy. I think actually what we've been accustomed to over the last, say, 2 years of the market going straight up, that part, that aspect of the market, that's very abnormal itself. Because over longer periods of time, you'll recognize that pullbacks may occur and they're necessary. In fact, the market, as measured by the S&P 500, the largest companies domiciled here in the United States, they tend to see 3 5% pullbacks on a 1 calendar year basis. If you take it a step further, it tends to see 10% pullback on an annual basis. And a 20% pullback on an annual basis happens every about 3.5 years. So they happen. Yet we haven't seen a 10% pullback in the market since the summer of 2022, but they're supposed to happen every year. And it's been over 2 years since our most recent one. So I think volatility is normal, it's healthy, and it's one of the best ways that helps Presage to have a market reset to see better returns out into the future. I would say that during growth, periods of time where the market has a pullback due to growth or uncertainty of growth, they tend to be short-lived. But there's been 5 time periods over the last 15 years. There's 2010, 11, 13, 16, and 18. Were the last times we saw a pullback in the market that was growth-oriented. I'm also excluding COVID because that was very much an extraordinary. When you saw a growth scare in the market, the average peak-to-trough drawdown was about 16%. We're about 10% right now. I'm not saying that you need to buckle up, put your seatbelt on, that we can see another 6% down, because I think the market is in a very much more healthy position than what we were during those 5 periods that I just mentioned right there. And I can state that with the factual evidence that all of them move it out in the future. This past quarter, we saw 16% earnings per share growth, and next quarter, we're expected to see 11% earnings per share growth. So periods. And that's why I don't know if we might see that 16% pullback, which is the average pullback, 16% pullback, which is the average pullback during those 5 periods of time. We saw some type of growth. During those 5 periods of time, we saw some type of growth scare. Hey, Dave, if I was to ask myself, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like you're really worried, and 1, you're not worried at all. Like, we're worried maybe, I think that given the recency bias in the markets and I think that given the recency bias in the markets and the political jargon going on in DC, whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. You shouldn't care about my DC, whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. You shouldn't care about my opinion on that. And if we possibly can, that's something to beat it over longer periods of time. It actually pays very much periods of time. It actually pays very much to be simplistic. So whether we're talking about the market or showing you numbers, we would be simplistic. But every single year I write a market outlook for what I think could happen into the future over the next 12 months. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can at least have some types of assumptions out there. But we use themes. Like in 2022, I used the Coen Brothers movie, 2022 was based off an HBO show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. The creator of Seinfeld, Larry David, has a show out there that says Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I said, the market participants need to curb their enthusiasm heading into the future. My one last year was based off the 1957 novel by Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. And if you think of gross domestic product, the acronym is GDP, it's kind of a mechanism or a rate to see what the U.S. economy is growing at on a year-over-year basis. About 70% of GDP is derived from consumer spending. And in the book Atlas Shrugged, they're always wondering, when's Atlas going to shrug? Atlas is holding up the world. Well, in the terms of the market, the consumer is Atlas holding up the economy. And if the market shrugs, you could have some type of trouble. Well, I've told you multiple times now, even though that was last year's theme, that the consumer remains strong and the propensity remains strong. Our theme heading into this year, 2025, hopefully is also very fun. It was based off the 1980s movie, but it almost wrote itself in market commentary because a lot of the focus of market participants over the last 3 years has focused on the Federal Reserve. Those are the folks that control monetary policy and interest rates. And there's been a question that the market's been trying to answer for a very long time now. That continues to get smaller. Meaning, can they have this market, can they make this market witness some type of soft landing instead of a hard landing? A soft landing basically a plain jargon and pun that very much plays into the airplane theme. But given the changing dynamics of this market and the evolution of swiftness, the benchmark for the largest stocks in the United States, it's the most concentrated it's ever been, with the top 10 stocks. This is actually what Jeff was talking about, the magnificent characteristic called operating leverage, which I'm not going to get into right now, but it means that revenue growth can grow stronger than it has ever historically, or if the tides turn, that it could decline, on a greater have better years than you've been accustomed to, but you can also have worse years than you've been accustomed to. And that's why it's been such a godsend and a grace to be able to work with guys, like Jeff, that they've been able to look through the windshield that this market has changed. It continues capital to make sure that you can take advantage of any type of market regime that we can see out there in the future. Whether it's the right tail, kind of like the market we've seen over the last 2 years when 2023 was up 27.7%, or last year the market was up 25.0%, or kind of time periods like we've seen over the last 3 weeks when the market's pulled back 10%. We call that a left tail, also playing within the airplane theme. But I love your ability to be pragmatic over dogmatic, and I couldn't be more convicted for how we have y'all positioned into the future, given the ever-changing dynamic that we've really seen, not just over the last 12 months, but really since the beginning of quantitative easing back in the early 2010s. So, one, I want to thank you guys for trusting us with your hard-earned capital, but also I want to make sure that you guys know that we're convicted, and at the end of the day, conviction resonates. And people like myself and the rest of our team, the ones making the decisions, we couldn't be more convicted now, and I can't wait to talk to whoever wants to talk to me, which you probably shouldn't if I wear this Kentucky uniform up here, but anyone that wants to talk to me at the end of this on the side, once we start to mingle and watch some basketball, I want to show you the conviction that we have and why we're so excited moving into the future of how we are positioned right now. We can also talk about individual stocks that you guys have in your portfolios that I run, the funds, really anything. I think we're kind of carte blanche, so please come up to me. I would love to speak to y'all, but thank you very much for your time today. genuine trust that they provide to us is it's sacred. And that's our job, to understand what our clients want. Do they want to leave a legacy? How? And we take it very seriously. And now it's passed along from my dad, and hopefully I'm passing along now to my son. And this firm will be around since we've been around for 58 years. I look forward to, hopefully, I don't know if I'll make it, but for the 75th and 100th year anniversary of our firm.
And he's, they didn't seem like to be going anywhere right now.
Look at to the next slide, just where you got it. So, is everybody okay? Not watching the Tennessee game yet? Anybody gonna throw oranges at me while I'm talking up here? Jake, is he here? No. That slide that's up there right now that says if you don't change directions, you might end up where you're going. I know it's one of my favorite phrases that I guess I picked up somewhere probably more than a decade ago, and Billy has talked about it as well. It's an interesting phrase. The author is unknown on that, but I've kind of claimed it, I guess, at B&H, and when I started using it, 10, 12 years ago, what it meant to me at that point in time, and maybe only what it meant originally, was for a retirement, you don't want to go broke before you die. You also don't run out of your health before you die as well. But what it means to me now is much, much deeper than that. And I can speak to, Tony speaks to this all the time, is that when you give your life to Jesus completely, that is exactly what you do. You're moving in one direction, which, is you're going to hell, and you turn around and you completely change, and you don't make Jesus part of your life. You make Jesus your life. And that's, God willing, and the creek don't rise, as they say here in East Tennessee, in 13 days, on April 2nd, I will have been saved for 2 years. So the man that stood up here 7 years ago is no longer alive. But there's a lot of him in me. Because I had 63 years and 74 days. I like numbers, and that's good for you all, that I like numbers. And I really wasn't very good at math in school, by the way. My friend Pat Breeding used to say, you're doing what? But anyway, that's a rabbit hole I don't need to go down into, Sherry, because I said I'd stay out of rabbit holes. But 63 years and 74 years for someone like me, the baby of my family, someone that had gifts, but I thought they were just talents. I was fairly intelligent. I can communicate. I have a quick wit. Those are incredibly good traits, but they are also dangerous used incorrectly. Fortunately, most of the time before I gave my life to Christ, I used them pretty well. And by the way, in 4 days, I will have been sober for 2 years. So I have changed directions rather dramatically. And I'd say a lot of people that have known me would think that was probably the least likely person that would ever happen to. But I was also the person that I would say needed it more than anybody, because I had, most of your life, when you have a family and you do things, even if you're prone to being as self-centered and as arrogant and as much me in the middle of everything. The center of my life was me. Fortunately, my children and my ex-wife and raising a family and having to practice B&H Wealth Strategies, which means the world to me, those things were all so important to me, and as a result of it being important to me, that worked well for the people in this room. But eventually, life will gobble you up. It'll just, the tragedy of life for whatever reason. Now, like I said, I'm going to tell you a bit of my story, but I want to tell you a little bit where I am first. And by the way, I need to read my notes. So these are my notes, by the way. Now, I can't read a damn thing on this board, but I wrote it. And so, as this Tennessee game comes on, what I have on here is TMI. This is last week I had COVID, and in my office, all my staff did, except for one person, which is, again, just when you think it's over, right? So, unfortunately, it wasn't last week, but I told Pastor this a few minutes ago. When you're in the throes of COVID and you're sick and you're weak and you're vulnerable, you lay around. It was a week ago tonight. The enemy will come and talk to you, and he told me this, and maybe some other people maybe think this, that you're doing this for you. You're not doing this for other people. But I want to, but I'm not, and we've talked about it and prayed about it. And I guess in some ways that I will change. If it changes somebody's life, and they can see that what you can do is you can overcome your limitations and maximize your capabilities. And, and I'll talk about this in a bit. I lost my sight. I lost a lot of things, but I lost my sight. And I can tell you that life's pretty hard without sight, especially when you've had it for most of your life, especially when you deal with numbers and narrative around numbers all the time. But it does make a difference. And every person in this room can make a difference if they reach for the highest all the time. And that's the Lord. Whether, it just is, because you're never going to give up and you never want to disappoint. And that's, and that's the life that I live now. And in some ways I maybe didn't want to disappoint, but I always found a way. If you're like me and you're arrogant and you don't reach for the highest, but you're good at what you do and you're good at life, let's say, a lot of things in life, doubt will creep in because you're the center of your universe, right? You're at the center. And there will be moments, you'll be doing fantastic, but you will self-sabotage yourself every time. I don't know if anybody else feels like that, but I know I did. But when the Lord is the center of your universe, and Jesus Christ is what it is, you'll never want to disappoint. You'll have days when you'll disappoint, but you will pull the covers off of you. You will get out of bed and you will pick up your cross and you will walk uphill every day. And you may not be in days that may not be, one day may not be better than the other, but if you're always aiming that way, your worst will be better, your fair will be good, your good will be really good, your really good will be great, and your great will be your great will be excellent. You won't get to perfect. There was only one. But I know that with all the pain and suffering that I think that I've gone through, and I'll talk a little bit about it, and it wasn't nothing. All the pain and the suffering that I went through are nothing compared to what Jesus went through 2,000 years ago for me and every person in this room. The pain, the suffering, the humiliation, the betrayal that he went through to die for everyone in this room. If you can't get up and take on the day, then so be it. But yeah, I can get up and be blind. I thank God when I wake up, and it's very early in the morning. The good thing about waking up early now is I don't wake up because I think, oh my God, what did I do yesterday? I wake up now and think, God, what do I get to do this day? And I thank the Lord every day for every breath that I take. And why is that important? It's important because the people in this room are who I go out and work for. My family that's over here, I work for them. I want my kids to see the best me that I can be. And that at 65 years old now, blind, my body is falling apart in many ways, but the best is yet to come. I wanted, where I used to go when the world would fall apart around me, and the me that was me, there was only one other person that was that sat higher on a throne than me, and that was Matt's dad, Linda's husband, our brother, John. John was that guy for me. John was always there for me. He did, I mean, just no matter what. Starting in 1975 when my dad had a massive heart attack when I was a sophomore in high school, getting ready to be a sophomore in high school, and he had a massive heart attack. John basically became my father for that summer, and from that point forward, in many ways, I think Bob would agree, and we've talked about this. He was the de facto dad in our family at different times because my dad had a lot of health issues. Now, my dad was also my hero. My dad was the best financial planner I've ever seen. My dad was my best friend. He was my business partner, but again, he was my father, my dad. So he was an amazing man. So I'm not throwing him under the bus. That's not what I'm doing at all. But what I'm telling you is that John Bingham was the person that could solve any problem. When my youngest beautiful daughter was born 19 years ago, is that right? 19, 20, going on 20, almost 20 years ago, my goodness. 20 years ago, you're gonna be 20 on June 9th. And Jennifer, my ex-wife, was critically ill with stage 4 choriocarcinoma. She was a miracle she was born. We had to go to Duke for almost 6 months. Who was down there with me step for step, shielding me and helping me be with her to try to, to get her back to health. And thank the Lord she survived, and it was a miracle. But the time that it was the darkest down there, and I suppose this was maybe foreshadowing in a way, but John was down there, but he had to go home. It was 4th of July weekend. Jennifer had just had brain surgery, and John wasn't there. She was drowning because her lungs were full of cancer. She couldn't breathe. She was literally drowning. They put her in a pulmonary ICU ward, and she was in a coma, and they wanted to know whether to put her deeper into a coma and put a chest tube into her chest and drain it. And I could hear the doctors arguing about the pulmonary doctor versus the cancer doctors were arguing back and forth about whether or not they should do the procedure. And then they're asking me, what do you want to do? And it was when the Shively girl down in, if you remember, in 2005, I think her name was Shively, was down in Florida. There was a court case that was going on to pull the chest, breathing tube out of her to let her die. And I can remember Jennifer talking about that and said she never wanted to live that way. I'd been up for 72 hours. They were asking me to make a decision like that. My brother wasn't there. I had no idea what to do. It was about 5:30 in the morning. I talked to Dr. Spillman, who was the doctor there, and I said, what should I do? And she kind of laid it out. She said, you're a numbers guy. She gave me some probabilities. I said, I need to go think about this and kind of figure this out. I walked out into a dark hallway on the 5th floor outside of the pulmonary intensive care unit at Duke University into a rounded corridor. I walked and it was dark. The sun hadn't come up yet. I walked to the far side of that room, or not a room, but a rounded corridor where service elevators were in old gurneys, and I was staring out the window, and I was thinking, I need my brother. I don't know what to do. And a hand reached out and touched me, and it was a Presbyterian minister that did the service at my dad's funeral in 2010, Squeaky. I never can remember her name, Bob. From Black, in that dark room where no one should have found me. No one knew where I was, and she touched me, and I'm sure that was the hand of God. And from that point in, I made the decision, and your mother, Jennifer, got better. It was still a battle, but from that moment, and I can't even remember what she said to me. I don't remember it all. But it wasn't her. It was God that touched me. And even then, I didn't stay in my faith. It waned from there. A miracle. That was a miracle that God performed in our life. And I just shrugged it off and went back to being me pretty quickly thereafter after we got home, because that's who I was. I didn't have strong faith. I grew up in a family that I was raised Presbyterian. It wasn't like God wasn't in our family. We did went to church. I was telling somebody this the other day, but I was the youngest, and Bob and John probably went a lot more than I did. But I can remember there was a time when I used to pitch a fit on Sunday mornings. Instead of going to Sunday school and going to church, I'd wanted to watch Johnny Quest and Notre Dame football highlights. Can you imagine? I would rather stay home and watch Notre Dame football highlights than go to church. I hated Notre Dame. I still hate Notre Dame. But I knew that the Tennessee football, my mom and dad, again, they were worn out. And 3 boys, I mean, come on. But it just, so I knew about God and I knew about Jesus my entire life. But it just never stuck. It was just, I would have told you until 2022, late in 2022, that I was a believer. And I would have believed, and I believed I was a believer. But it was just so shallow and so weak. And then, so I'll try not to take too much time on this so people won't throw oranges at me. But when it got really difficult, it wasn't there. I went back to being me, and actually, I just couldn't make it stick. It just wasn't deep enough. And I remember a vivid conversation with a client of mine that actually was interviewing me to become a client. And this is, I don't know how many years ago this was. Otis Tankersley. He's a beautiful man. And he's trying to make his decision whether I was going to be his guy or not. He asked me if I was a Christian, if I was a believer. And this is probably 2012, 2015 maybe. I could be wrong on that. Doesn't matter. And I said, yes, of course I am. And I meant it. But somewhere inside me, I knew the way that he asked the question to me, that I didn't answer it the same way he asked the question. It wasn't the same. I knew it. And I never forgot it. And when I was saved, he was one of the first people that I called to tell him that, because it never left. So what I'm telling you out there is that God is always knocking at the door. He just wants he wants you to let him in so he can sit down and have a meal with you. And I think I read that today. I butchered that, Tony, I know, but that was from Revelations today. I read that and I thought it was beautiful, but it is. I mean, he's always there. And it's just whether you answer or not. And I mostly did. And every now and then I would answer, but I didn't. So, like I said, the foreshadowing that I told about the Duke stories, I wander all over everything. My notes are a little, I can't read my notes very well. But my notes are a little shaky. But what I was telling you about the foreshadowing is that when John left, and of course when he died on the morning of October 16th, when my brother Bobby called me, and Alita and I were at the loft. This is when we were still at the loft. And he called me and he said the words, "John is dead." I knew that I didn't. We went to Bob and Sherry's, but I knew I was alone. And from that point forward, we went over there. I thought it was pretty wild in college. But that's when I got good at math. Just kidding. I got good at being me. I got good at I guess I did kind of get good at math. I did a lot of bartending. I drank to deaden the pain. And there's really nothing worse than deadened emotional and mental pain. Physical pain is one thing. I think it's important. I used to have conversations with my buddy David Merrill about it all the time, is that pain is the most real thing there is. It'll make you different than physical pain. It's worse than physical pain. And what you want to do with that is deaden it. And we're told that we're supposed to be happy, that the world is supposed to just go away. I say, hell no, don't make the pain go away. Embrace the pain. Figure out what it's trying to tell you and go after it and get it. And where the answer is in the Lord. And this life is not easy, and I forgot to bring my Bible, but I can tell you, if you don't change directions, you might end up where you're going. Let me tell you it's not the retirement GPS system that we have where the answer is. It's in the Bible there that says life is going to be easy and it's going to not be painful, because it is. It's how you respond to that pain and how people watch you respond, inspired from that. And they can, when it happens to them, they go, how does he get through that? And they can look at you and say, he gets through that, or she gets through that because she goes to where they need to be fed, and that's to Jesus Christ. And if you do that every day and you pick up that cross, there is not any pain that is too great. There is not any adversity that's there. There is not any disability that's there. So the great stories that I have about my being saved is I was crushed. But you don't have to be crushed to find the Lord or to get something out of my story. You can be disabled. Again, I'm blind. And what's important to you as my clients that are out there, outside of maybe this story having some meaning to it, is that I will never quit. I will never quit, because I will never disappoint my Father in heaven. I will never. And I would have quit before, because I can damn sure tell you I was going to quit. I wanted to die. I told Sherry probably 2 weeks, maybe a week before I had my last drink, right after my beautiful wife's birthday, which was just an unmitigated mess. I told her that I was going to figure out a way to kill myself, because I was done. Can't do that. You just told me that, so you can't do that. And fair enough. So instead, what I set out to do was to destroy, which I was already doing, everything that was around me. Everything I loved, everybody that tried to help me. I was just never drank during work. I showed up every day and went to work. The good thing about any of the old me that was me, I worked out every day. I worked out every single day. I got up early because I couldn't sleep because of I suppose the shame, the guilt, whatever you want to call it, just the sin that I knew that I was living in. But I got up, and what I rode, and I got on a bike, I'd pass out for 4 hours. I'd get up, and I'd ride on a trainer inside for 2 hours, or more, and just try to beat my brains out. I actually figured that was the way I probably could kill myself, because I figured if I was doing what I was doing at night, there's a picture up somewhere in here of the armor that I thought that I needed. You can show, is that what he thought? And I thought that was strong enough to hold off everything. And even at the end, you can move that to the bar to take it off there. Now, one thing, honey, I don't look that good anymore, but I still look okay. But that was, I was still, even when I was drinking, I was doing this thing, I was riding, and even losing my vision, I was riding 7,000 to 7,500 miles a year on a bike. And I wasn't drinking at work, and I wasn't drinking until I got my miles in. But let me tell you, as soon as I clocked out, I went straight to it, and I was, this is how arrogant I'm making it cheap. I was drinking Don Julio because, Don Julio tequila, and if anybody knows, and my buddy Chris Jenkins, there's a few people in this room that know, and a few people that drank Don Julio with me, because I'd buy it for anybody that was around me, because I was a big shot, and big fish in a little pond, right, Tony? The master manipulator, which I was, and so I would drink that, as soon as I was done. I would get off a train, I would ride 40, 50, 60 miles in the evening, which would take, let's say 3 hours, after work. I wouldn't take a shower. I wouldn't take my bibs off. I'd go straight to the refrigerator, the freezer, and I'd pour myself 2 shots of tequila. Then I'd go take a shower. Then I'd go out to eat. And drink a glass of wine. And so, that's what I did. But I showed up at work every day, and and Billy pointed this out to me, and I think this is important to the clients. They go, God, I'm still working with this guy. I did my work. I went through and I did my work. but I just was miserable, and I wasn't. And I was good at my work even then, I guess. Billy would said that I was, so I'll take his word for it. I couldn't remember. But was I the best I could be? Not even close. Not even close. But now I am, because I wake up without the fog. I don't spend that kind of time on the bike. Is that what have I got right there? What's up there on the board? Oh, yeah. Like I said, I wouldn't take my vision back to and show that crazy eye video. So it didn't matter to match to that. So I've kind of wandered off into all kinds of different ways to go, which I knew I would do, because I've prayed about this for 45 days, and I've changed this story 45 times. And each time I've added to it, taken away, and I've got my notes down here. Don't give too much information. TMI. That was information for my wife. Don't give too much information. Don't be too spiritual. Don't be too long. How long is this going to take? Tennessee's playing basketball. That's the encouragement I got. No, I got, and fair enough, I got more encouragement than that, but I did right. Those are the things that are written on this board right here. Like, hey, thanks. I didn't, I've got enough self, negative talk in my head. The enemy will show up every now and then. So anyway, where was I? What are we talking about? No. I just want everybody to know that not me, but anybody that will fully take and put Jesus Christ at the center of their life, it will change you profoundly. It will make you the best you can possibly be. And I don't have an ego big enough, and I heard this from Russell Brand. I've squeezed enough ego out of me to know that I will never be Jesus, but I'm damn sure going to try to get to be as good as Paul. And Paul McCartney used to be my hero. Paul, Saul of Tarsus, is my hero, because Paul, I think Tony will verify this, not only did he lose his sight for how many ever days on the road to Damascus when the Lord took his sight to keep him from persecuting Christians, and he changed his life there, but he never regained his sight. Paul was mostly blind. If you look, an amanuensis, I think, I spoke Greek, butchered it, and that's a scribe. But a couple of times he wrote his own letters when it was important enough, and Tony can tell you the chapter and the verse of that, but he wrote in big block letters. So Paul, was, for not being, one of the 12, he spread the word. He wrote more words in the Bible than any. Right, I wrote more words, more chapters, verses, etc. in the Bible. To him, he is now, he's my hero. And I've had a lot of heroes. Batman and Superman as a kid. Bobby played the villain. I got to beat him up when I was a little kid in my Superman uniforms. And then I was the man from U.N.C.L.E. Dalio, Eric Thomas, who's a motivational speaker. Those that don't know, those are those days. Go ahead and move it to that slide for me. He was he didn't have a lot of redeeming characteristics. He wasn't the worst. Every now and then you'd see, but he was the protagonist in the story. But if you will, of mine, and who, I when 2005. That was the beginning of the end for me, because that was in many ways with the height of the details. But to give you an idea of the crushing of life that comes, and how I pushed through it and ignored it at the same time. When I left town, my marriage of almost 27 years or whatever it was, 25 years at the time I suppose, was over, and it had been a heart test, and it was, most of it was pretty good, except it came back and had a PSA of 15. And for those males in the room to know what your PSA is supposed to be, it's not 15. And so that would suggest cancer or potential cancer. I went down to a specialist, and everybody in my family has had just with the PSA that this didn't bode well. So I went down there to a specialist, Dr. Bush in Chattanooga. Right after that, I had an MRI. I had a biopsy down there with an MRI. It's kind of a targeted thing. He was a specialist. And he looked at, he hadn't even read the results yet, hadn't done the results. He said, but, I'm going to see these results. You can see these things. I waited for the results for 2 weeks. He called me. I was on number 10 tee at Richfields when I got the call. And I went back to the bench back behind because we were playing the front tees because we like to gamble and drink when we played golf, and it was a lot of fun. And so we were on the front tees, that's the ladies' tees, but it was a drivable par 4, not that it matters to anybody in here except for Chris. So I'm sure he was probably in the group. And I walked back to that bench, and Dr. Bush said, I don't know how to explain it. You don't have cancer. I don't know how to explain it. You don't have cancer. And he was sure, and he's a specialist. That was a miracle from God. At the same time that was happening, I was losing the feeling in both my hands. I couldn't even write anymore. I couldn't drag my hand across a page. I went to a nerve conduction specialist, Dr. Jett, right across the street, right across the highway here, and got one of those needle tests. Well, they're a lot of fun. They stick needles into you to see if you got any feeling in your hands, which I had none. I had carpal and Arnold syndrome, right, in both hands. It was so rare to see something like that. He pulled every medical specialist in the office in there, and all the interns, and they had, what do you call it? The medical students were in there. I said, man, this is amazing. I didn't think it was, but he thought it was during that year. Before I had surgery on my right hand, I was on the lake at Bob and Sherry's with now my wife, Alita. Looked up, we were in a kayak. I looked up at the sky, and I saw more dots up there. I mean, it was like looking through a screen door. It was the first retinal detachment that I had in my right eye. I went and had surgery on that, put the oil in it. I don't know, 10 days later as the oil started to go down, it redetached. I lost my vision in my right eye just like that within 10 days. A week after that, I had surgery on my right hand. I was so... And again, as my marriage had fallen apart, I was building a relationship with my now beautiful wife that sits over there. And I couldn't drive. I had a patch on my eye. I had a cast-like thing on my right hand. She lived about 3 miles away from me. I'd walk over. It just kind of went by. I know that as we were going through this, I was going through a divorce. My kids were struggling through that. Alita was the most important thing in my life. She had now moved up to the top of my throne because I needed, and I was in love with her, and I still am, and I always have been. But it was wrong. It was a sinful relationship, and she was moving away from me, but I am a force of nature. I would pursue her at all cost. And that's what I mostly did in 2019. We would be together for a little bit, and she would go, no, you're not getting divorced. We can't do this. This is wrong. So I want to tell anybody that knows any part of a story about my story, I am the big fish in a little pond. She was a victim. She was not the reason that my marriage broke up. She is the most beautiful woman on the inside and the outside. I used to tell my therapist that. She has a woman of strong faith. I am a man of relentless pursuit. And those two things were in conflict with one another. But she kept moving away, and I kept chasing. We went through 2019. My divorce still hadn't taken place. It was just a lot of things that were going on. And then 2020 comes along, and that's COVID. And boy, you couldn't have a worse thing to happen to someone who is losing everything without really knowing it. But 2020 was a rough year. It wasn't a year of my arrogance. It was a year of probably starting to drink a lot more heavily, because I just needed to kill the pain. There was a lot of loneliness. We had to shut the business down for a couple of days, all the things. Alita had left her work, and eventually by the end of 2020, she felt so bad about what our relationship was. She moved back to Knoxville where her daughter and her grandson were. And I was devastated because my brother John was also dealing with a health issue in COVID. He had isolated. I couldn't go to either place of where my security was. I had nothing. I was alone at that point in time. So I built and developed a relationship with alcohol, I'd always had a relationship, but that's where I really began to build that relationship. Alone in my loft downtown, you know, night after night. And eventually, as the world began to open up, you know, the aloneness of the relationship, I was still alone, but I started, you know, I used to make fun of the Scobie's table where I worked out there for years. We used to call it, excuse my French, we used to call it the shit table, because the men that would come out there and sit without spouses and everything, and they were big shots and they weren't. I kind of became that. You know, starting in 2020 is disgusting. You know, I didn't think that's what it was, but I needed to go find someone's, you know, kind of, you know, the king needed to be fed, right? I needed to have people to adore me, to tell me how great that I was. So I could go to bars, I could sit there. I would find somebody to strike up a conversation. It didn't have to be a woman. Don't misunderstand that. I just needed people to tell me that I was smart, that I had insight, that I had all that. It fed me. I needed that. And it's just really kind of pathetic, but it's just true. And, you know, but again, I kept doing my work. Drink all of it. They keep it for me in the refrigerator. I mean, who gets that? Jeff Bingham gets that. That's who got that. You know, I didn't, you know, but at that time I just thought, well, that's just who I am. You know, I'm a big fish in a little pond. I'm a master manipulator. And then in 2021, you know, as COVID ended and Alita moved away, there was a moment, it was right at the beginning of December. I remember it like it was yesterday. I hadn't seen her in forever and she was moving and I was devastated and I knew it. And I was like, she's leaving. And she came, we saw each other. And it was, to me, it lit me up. And I thought there's hope. And even though she was leaving. And I kind of clung to that hope. You know, but I didn't change my ways necessarily. I just saw that as kind of a light, maybe at the end of the tunnel. And so I went through 2021, and I kind of turned my motor back on. You know, at first I thought it was because we were going to get back together, and then Jennifer and I, after 3 long years, finally settled our divorce. I was like, okay, then now, you know, what needed to be done has been done as far as, and I don't mean that kids in any way other than that. Your mother and I were going to get a divorce. It just took a long time. But Alita was like, well, we're not. You know, we can date, we can see each other. I was thinking, well, we're going to get married. This is, you know, I'm ready to get this thing going. She was like, no, you just got divorced. What are you thinking? And she was right, but that's not what I thought. And so instead of crumbling, though, under that weight right there, I set off on a different course. I set off on a course that was more me, the worst me that you could ever imagine. Now, I did a lot of good things in 2021. I rode my bike a lot. I had a really good year as far as the B&H Well Strategies was concerned. But nobody at work, Bob, but she's got to, I mean, think about it. She spends almost 24 hours every day with a Bingham. And they look alike. It's weird. Bob's the good one. I'm not. Now I'm better now, but he's always been the really good brother. But I set out on a course because I needed constant adornment and affection, and I sought it like a heat-seeking missile, going to bars, drinking, having people tell me how great I was. Young, old, didn't matter. But I still wanted and was in love with Alita. And so I rode, I was doing all these things. God, I hate to even talk about it. Or I guess I don't because I'm talking about it. And we rode the Tour de Possum. Remember that, guys? We rode the Tour de Possum. You know, so I was fit as can be. That picture that was up there, that was me fit. So I built that armor, man. My body was falling apart on the inside. I had no soul, but boy, the outside of my body looked good. And I was strong, and I could ride, and I could hold any wall off of me that there was. I used to tell anybody that would listen, I think I told this to Alito, I would tell my friend Bart all the time, when I would talk to him, I would say, as long as I keep moving, I can keep the walls off of me, right? I was strong, I was moving, and my body was hard, and if some of the walls, they chipped off and they hit me, it wasn't going to hurt me. I could do that, and I was doing that hand over fist. We rode the Tour de Possum. It was a 40-mile ride, 2 hours and under. You got a badge, like big deal, but it was. And I rode it in like an hour and 50 minutes. My buddy Emmett, that's in here somewhere, finished second in it. And so, again, how good was I? He ran, probably 140. Tom rode it in under 2 hours. That's how good he is. He flatted. He was so far ahead of me but I finally caught up to him because he was on the side of the road fixing a spare tire. I barely beat him. But I got it in under 2 hours. 2 days later, my left eye started to detach on a Friday in my office. And I knew it was detaching. I drove myself to see Dr. Gunn. And again, he said it was late on a Friday afternoon. Retinus detaching, couldn't do anything about it. Had it fixed a week later and was talking to her. And we kind of started talking again for Brian to buy the bike shop in the month of September without being able to see it all. And we put together a deal where he got that bike shop from Larry. That's how big a deal I thought it was. And that's not nothing to have what I had going on, but it's still the emptiest soul you can ever have. Later on in 2021, we're getting late in the year, Isbell, guess how I bought her engagement ring? I bought it with Bitcoin. You talk about a bad mamma jamma. I bought an engagement ring with Bitcoin. My son basically did all of it for me because I could never pull it off. I mean, I funded it. but that's, and that's nothing, but again, it's like, it goes that height that I was. And so I did that. We got engaged before the Chris Stapleton concert. Kind of changed my musical taste. Started listening to country music, which again was foreshadowing to listening to worship and spiritual music, because it's a lot closer to country music than it is to rock and roll. That's for sure. Can I get an amen on that? So that was kind of the start of that right there. But still, as we moved into 2022, there were so many good things that happened in 2022. We show the picture of Alita and David and I there. So in 2022, we set out on a course together. We were going to get married. We went to the beach. We had a great time. Again, still my ways had front row seats at Elton John. I can't even begin to tell you how much money that cost to go see Elton John out there, but it's the only way I could see him. I had to a big time cycling event that lowly amateurs like myself could ever ride in, and we did it first class, and we did it. I rode in an Oak Ridge race where and I bought a house. I forgot. Oh yeah, we bought a house. I forgot a small detail. We bought a house in Oak Ridge. I was going to commute back and forth from Oak Ridge to B&H Wealth Strategies. It's because it could drive automatically. I hadn't lost my vision yet. Again, that's kind of the height of arrogance as well. It's kind of stupid, but it's me. And because I was losing my vision in my left eye, was getting a little worse. And I was like, I got to do something about this. I went to the Wells Eye Clinic in Philadelphia. Alita and I went up there together right at the end. I guess it was right at the 1st of June. And they looked at my eye and they said, there's not anything we can do about it, Dr. Joe Gunn. I'm gifted, but those are also the gifts that I have. Whatever reason that I've had that given to me. I think I know why that is now, but I don't think I know. I just, that's so arrogant too. I don't know. But I went up there and they said, no, Dr. Gunn's doing everything he can, but you need to go get that oil. I had oil in my eye to keep it from detaching. Said you need to go get that taken out because it can cause long-term problems. He said there's about a 3% chance, though, your retina wanted to. These others, my odds got to even be better than that. Like, what are the odds? When he told you, 3%. He told me what the odds were. So I went back, and on June the 14th, Dr. Gunn took the oil out. Us getting married on June the 24th of 2022, Alita and I got married. my sister-in-law, my assistant, my best friend, Sherry Bingham, and my brother put first grade Jackson School. He also baptized me, and you'll see that in a minute, but he married Alita and I on June the 24th. 5 days later, my retina redetached again. I had surgery the next day to fix it. They put oil in it. It emulsified in this madness. And it was disorienting. But he couldn't do anything about it because I just had 2 surgeries. My mom was dying, and it was in August of 2024. She died. I spent the last 2 nights with her. We spent the last night of her life with her. I saw her take her last breath, and I know she went on me. Your mom always knows what you need. And she used to always tell me, give it to God. And I was like, sure, Mom, that's what I'm going to in that room. The last day she took a breath, her last day of life on earth. But I know I'm going to see her again, and I'm going to get that's true. That was on the 24th. On the 29th of August, I went back in for surgery again to take this fish egg oil out of my eye. They took it out. I immediately redetached again. And on September the 3rd, I went back into surgery. And I'll come to a conclusion. But this is what happened. And I went back into surgery, or didn't tell the anesthesiologist or my surgeon that I didn't tell about 2020. I also had AFib. I don't take any medication at all now, by the way. If you don't think stopping alcohol and putting Jesus Christ in the center, I was taking none of those. Praise the Lord. None. But on that night when I prayed, I went into AFib, because the handy thing about Apple Watches is, and I can kind of tell when it's happening, they'll tell you when it's happening. And I went over and have surgery, didn't say a thing about it. Went in that I've had, not all of them been detachments, various other procedures, but all amount to the same thing. It was the only time it wasn't Dr. Gunn that performed the surgery to follow up. I went because your blood pressure dropped down to nothing, so we had to deal with it until I can let it heal up about a month later. And as I said, my mom had died. The great thing, not about my mom dying, but for the month of September, we planned we did the service ourselves. We spent all that time together looking at pictures, laughing, having just doing what brothers do together. Because one thing about my family is, you don't get it back. And it's a policy, and I'm going blind. That might qualify for disability, duh. And so, but I had John. It's complicated. John was in my crew. I had October 1st, which was my dad's birthday. Without question, the day to do it, right, Tom? Was on my dad's birthday. Job we all did of talking about our mother, who was, she had her flaws like everybody else. But I guarantee you that woman went to more football games and more practices than any woman combined, or many women in this room, or men combined. And spent the last week of John's life planning with him, working with me side by side on that. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. He said, I would love to trade one of my eyes for your stamina and endurance. 15th but the 14th was Friday, right? The 14th, and we've got a plan. He might have said go Vols at the end of that, but he said we have a plan. Jake and I lay down and went to sleep that night. The next morning, Bob called me in the early morning hours of the 16th of October, and I went further down into the bottom of the abyss. Will you put the 10-day sober up there? Can you go back to that? 10 days sober. See that picture right there? That's a book cover that I hope to write one day, which is called 10 Days Sober and 1 Day Saved. It's either a book cover or it's a country song. And Matt, I tried to get Matt to write it tonight in about 4 hours. On Monday, after Tony and David put their arms around me, and I went to the front of the church, Old Partners Barbecue. I didn't want to I wanted my wife back. I wanted my life back. And I heard the words that Tony spoke that day on Palm Sunday. My knees, with those liquor bottles around me, in that suit that probably used to look really good, tattered, torn, and whatnot. And that's what I do every day now. I can tell you that if you go into my office upstairs, there's a picture, not the portrait that you see in most churches, and I used to look at in the Presbyterian Church, which is a very pristine Jesus Christ on the cross. The one that looks more like if you've watched The Passion, which is the brutality, because it was the most with the armor of God sitting above it, as opposed to going into the gym and working out like a madman to try to make my body armor. I put on the armor of God, and I take on the world every day. And I can tell you that everybody that knows me, that works with me over here, or Job, I am, and if you want to equate where I am and the way that my delivery is, if you want to use sports, I'm a lot more Bobby Knight than I am John Wooden. Does anybody get that? And I would say that few people in everybody in my office can say amen to that. And that's what forces me back onto the floor in front of that cross. And I climb up on that cross every day and die. And I try to put it on my back and come off as close to Jesus as I can, knowing it's never going to happen. But I'm trying to be a lot more like Jesus than I am like me anymore. And I tell you that to tell you all of us can think that we're only one person. What can we do? Well, I'm going to tell you, there's more than 100 people in this room right now, and I know every one of you. And every one of you know another 100 people. The math is on that. That's 1 million people. And you tell your story to one person, and you see what I'm saying? Everybody can make a difference. And that's what I'm trying to do, is make a difference. So my kids can say, my dad finished well. He wasn't a bad dad. I solved problems for my kids all the time, but I didn't keep them out of the problems. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I could solve problems. I knew people. I was good at it. But I wasn't good at the nurturing and to teaching them what's the most important. And it wasn't their dad. It wasn't their mother. It was Jesus. He was not the central part of my life, so therefore he wasn't the central part, but I can make it better now every day. Finish well. I have taken way too much time, but I'd like to bring Tony up. If y'all, I know it was, what's the score in Tennessee game? Somebody's got to be. Figure out a way to reduce and minimize your limitations, to maximize your capabilities. Because I promise you, I am so much better blind than I ever was with eyesight. I noticed everything that was unimportant. Now I can't see what's unimportant, and I don't care. I see what's important. I have I have such greater clarity on life than I've ever had in my life, and it gets better every single day. Tony. Come in, just, I don't know, let's just pray and close it out. You want to?
Yeah.
Just pray and close it out.
Yeah, let me do that.
Okay.
We were going to have some time together, but we've lost some people in here because they've had to go. And I think you get the message. Jeff's life has been changed by the grace of God. And because of that, he's going to be better at everything he does. Because when the Lord is truly in control of your life, he takes control of every aspect of it. And Jeff's told a lot about what life was like before he met Jesus. But I want to tell you, he is a different man than the man I first knew. And the real testimony is not what he was before, but what he is after he met Jesus. Because Jesus, as he said, doesn't want to be a part of your life and mine. He wants to be our life. He wants to be the reason we get up in the morning, the reason we go to bed at night, the reason we live like we do. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for staying and for listening. And I pray that God will settle in your heart not only where you'll spend eternity, but how you'll live the rest of your life from this night forward. Let's pray together. Lord, we're so grateful that you meet us where we are and take us to where we need to be. Thank you that you love us enough that you'll take us just where you find us, but that you love us too much to leave us like we are. You change us, built, that Jeff is a different man than he once was. Now he's whole and he looks at life from a different perspective. And I pray that you would build confidence in those who are investing through this company, that now they have a man that is whole and that looks at life not only from his own selfish perspective, but from the perspective of doing what's best for others. Thank you, Lord, for what you've done in Jeff's life. Thank you for every person here tonight. Thank you for our honored guest, his partners who have come to share in this night. And so bless us as we together. In Jesus' name, amen.
There might be some basketball still being played. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the night if you can.
How about that, folks? Wow. Goodness gracious. I don't even know how to end that. So here's a man who was on top of the world, had everything. Everything. You heard it. Anything at his fingertips was, he had it. Lord took it away. You heard that too. Yeah, someone say went too long. Okay. He's not a polished speaker, but he spoke from his heart. All the things that he had going for him, he traded it all for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So, what a lesson for the rest of us. What a lesson for the rest of us. You think you're in charge, you are not in charge. He thought he was in charge. He's not in charge. He doesn't want to be in charge now. I don't know why. I have no clue when he called me up out of the blue. I've not talked to this man for 6, 7, at least 6. And the arrogance that he has, or had, because he thought he was 10 foot tall and bulletproof as we all do. So he goes from that to where he is now. And so this company is now a Christian, obviously a Christian-based financial planning company, B&H Wealth Strategies. And this room's full of his clientele. And I looked around, they were sitting on the edge of the seat listening to what this man had to say. Spoke from his heart. Spoke from his heart, no question. His heart, no question. And a lesson for all of us. It was the show, and tonight, this event. Anyway, I had no clue what he wanted me to do when I got here. He said, I'm going to share my testimony. I said, okay. Had no clue what it was. I knew he told me on the phone when we first booked this that he'd gone blind. But I had no clue. I don't know what it did for you, but it, got a hold of me. People need the Lord. People need the Lord. Psalm 62:8 says, trust in him at all times. This is my verse that I picked out this morning for the show this morning, and it carries over to this tonight. Psalm 62:8 says, trust in him at all times. Psalm 62:8 says, trust in him at all times. O people, pour out your hearts to him, for God is your refuge, God is your shelter. Had no clue when I picked that out this morning how it would go hand in hand with what this man said tonight. I thought we were going to come talk about being eight, and we did to a point. We had a couple of speakers. But I had no clue what I was in for. And man, oh man, oh man, am I glad I came. So, and you know what? Tennessee ball game's going on over here. Does it matter? Absolutely not. It does not matter. March Madness doesn't matter. You're one heartbeat away from eternity. It doesn't matter. Tennessee's winning big. He said, well, there's a game going on. There wasn't a soul watching these screens ever listening to what he had to say. You know why? Because it was far more important than the Tennessee basketball game or any of these games going on. People need the Lord. Our people need the Lord. Our pastor said, Mark Fowler said, Pleasant Beach Baptist Church, he said, everybody in this room, everybody you see, anywhere, anytime, Walmart, ball game, the guy pulls up beside you in the stoplight, anybody, everybody that you see is either saved or lost. Real simple. And either they're going to spend eternity with him in heaven or eternally separated from him in a place called hell. People don't want to hear that, but that's the way it is. That's in the book. In fact, the Lord spoke more about hell than he did about heaven. So anyway, I had no clue when I told him I'd do this, what it was going to be. I'm glad I came. I'd do this, what it was going to be. I'm glad I came, and I'm glad that you all got to see it. And you need to go back and listen to it because it speaks volumes. That's as good as any sermon you'd ever want to hear from any pastor anywhere. Because this man's been down in the trenches. This man's been rock bottom on multiple occasions, in multiple ways. Lost his eyesight, both hands. At one point, he couldn't use either hand. In a business, he writes all the time. Lord got his attention. And you know what? He'll get your attention. He got my attention in a plane crash back in '84. Got my attention. He'll get your attention. So, I don't know what else to say. If you want to talk, you can. It is get his take on what we're doing here. Oh, okay, let's scoot this around. There we go.
I'm good if I don't. Yeah, if you need some filler space.
I'm right here. Let's go. Let's talk.
Okay, all right.
Hello, Mark Witherspoon. Thank you, sir. As I was saying, I had no clue when your brother called me up and said, I want you to come do this show. I had no clue because we've done it before back before COVID. So he said, I'm legally blind on the phone. I didn't know that. Didn't know that, obviously. There's a different man.
Yeah, without question.
As your father would say, without question. So your late father. So, I am so glad I came. I had no clue. I'm just dumbfounded because his testimony.
He heard, yeah.
You want to hear from any preacher, I can tell you that. You know why? Because it came from his heart.
It came from his heart, exactly.
And he hit rock bottom.
He hit rock bottom, and he's totally ashamed. I mean, he's the same quality there, but he is a totally different person. Yeah. And a better person.
Yeah. He's your brother. Yeah. He's your brother. He's one of his brothers. John's gone. So it's him and this is Bobby who coaches track.
Are we on the air right now? This is live. People can see this?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I should have worn my hat then. I wouldn't look so bad.
No, you're all right. You're a handsome booger. How many years have you been coaching DB?
Gosh, talk about long time.
Yeah.
A lot of years.
And see, that seems so inconsequential to me tonight. He said the Tennessee game's on. This man's talking about eternity. This man's talking about hitting rock bottom. Now, you think he lost his eyesight. He reached that point with a carpal tunnel. He couldn't use either hand in a business that requires writing, a lot of writing.
And he was an avid golfer with the hands, killed him with that.
Avid golfer spoke from his heart. I mean, it got to me. It still does. So, what would you say to somebody out there? This is your brother. You saw him on top of the world, the pinnacle of success, down to hitting rock bottom. So, looking at camera, what would you say to those people out there? Because I guarantee you there's people out there dealing with the same thing he's dealing with, whether it's him as he is and he's a better.
Man, he talked about his sins. He faced incredible adversity.
Yep.
Incredible adversity. And he actually had hit rock bottom. Brother, you see some of that, but you don't see all of it until you see it in hindsight. It was there, and it's a truly It's amazing transformation.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing transformation.
That only the Lord could do. Gotta give
With,
him credit.
no, without question. That's who he gave credit to,
Mm-hmm.
continues through that, and it's without that, I don't know where Jeff would be right now.
Yeah.
I really, it's kind of scary. I don't know where
Yeah.
he'd be.
Whole time he's speaking, thinking, I had no clue what I was signing up for. I hadn't talked to him. He called me out of the blue, and I thought, this is interesting. Why would he call me and ask me to do this? And he told me on the phone that he's had met and got saved and was now legally blind. And would you come live stream this? And I said, sure. And I'm thinking, can look and go, okay, if Jeff Bingham can do it, I can do it. Then it's worth all these 3 hours I've been sitting here. So, because there's people I guarantee I know people without naming names.
Oh, we all everybody
I know people without naming names.
Oh, we all everybody
know
knows
people.
people.
We all know
you
people.
And I probably know some people in common.
Absolutely, we do. And they're going through the same thing. The same thing Jeff
Same
Bingham
things,
did.
and yeah.
And yeah, so it's awesome. What an honor to come be a part of this tonight.
Yeah.
So it's.
And I know you.
What an honor to come be a part of this tonight.
Yeah.
So it's.
And I know you knew my dad real well, and I wish Dad is. See, but Dad would be so proud of where Jeff is right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And your mother.
Absolutely, exactly. Well, he talked a lot about. We talked about Mom and Dad too, but yeah, yeah.
And
Mom,
John be proud too.
John definitely would be. And
His
Mom
brother.
to
Yeah.
see the transformation that she always wanted to see in him. That was, he spoke on that. It was kind of special.
Absolutely. Ever a mama. How many times have I heard people down through the years say, because my mama praying or my daddy praying, and a lot of times mama praying. So I guarantee you, your mother prayed a lot for Jeff Bingham. She saw where he was headed, and now she gets to, she'll get a chance to see up there.
You know that when he got Kathy to put the thing back on together again, has been with him for years and years. He mentioned to me, he said, I'm going to have Tom Taylor there.
Wow. I didn't know to the depth. He said, I'm going to share my testimony. Well, sometimes you hear people saying they hit the surface. He got down into the nitty gritty. And he won. Was it the Cornhour? What was the meat? The paper said the Cornhour crow meat. Was that right?
No, we just really,
It was not it?
just
That was
just early season meat we had. We had
Okay.
yesterday, and it's you put it in other sports sense, plus people in shape and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we had a good performance.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, you feel good about this year's track team at Dobbins
Yeah,
Bennett?
we we don't have anybody. You're gonna say this is a phrase out. I don't know if I'm doing it because of Dad or because I just do it all the time.
When your father would come on the show at the radio station, he was with us every week.
And he thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, and somewhere, I got to find it now, somewhere on a cassette, I've got one of his last shows we did together before we, I moved on to Charleston to the
Right,
Citadel and
right.
left town and took another job, left the area. But one of the last shows we did, I got it on cassette. I got to go home and dig. I got to go on a relentless pursuit to find that. But he hit one of his favorite. He had two things, absolutely and without questions. I say, does Tennessee need to win this game this week, Mr. Bingham? He'd say, by financial planning. And, of course, his sidekick was Norman Hensley, thus the name B&H, Bingham and Hensley. They're both gone. And so, as Jeff alluded,
Truly enjoyed you.
yeah, your father, yeah,
When I see you, I think another one of your old buddies, Don Slaughter.
that's it.
I always think of Don. when I
Don
see
Slaughter,
you.
yep. I know you got to go. Thanks.
In the old days, I'd say Roll Tribe.
Roll Tribe, yep. Well, you still. Oh, I'm not sure how to end this broadcast, but it's 9 o'clock, and I don't know whether we'll get Jeff over here one more. Oh, I'm not sure how to end this broadcast, but it's 9 o'clock, and I don't know whether we'll get Jeff over here one more time or just he's surrounded by a bunch of people up there, so I guess that's how we're going to end it. So, yeah, it's the guy that's got it together now. He's always had it in at Bingham and Hensley. I'm not even sure what the number is, but I'm going to look it up real quick while we're talking here. Tennessee's winning big. The Volunteers are going to move on and play, and that was really no surprise. So let's hit this right here. And let's see. B&H Wealth Strategies. Yep, 247-1152. Money into organizations that are like thinkers like you that are Christian-based. Well, too late. 247-1152 is the number to call. 247-1150. Done a yeoman's job speaking from his heart. I've been doing this for over 40-some years. I don't know how to end this broadcast. Normally I just say we're going to go. There's not much more I need to say. So, hello? You want to come over and talk? Tomorrow at Food City on a Food City Friday. Tomorrow night we got the New Testament. If you're breathing, he can still reach you. He reached Jeff Bingham. He had to bottom out. He had rock bottom and a lot of fronts. But he reached him and changed him. If he can do Jeff Bingham, he was on top of the world. He had everything at his fingertips. In Kingsport, Tennessee, he can reach you wherever you are.